In this video, we're going to discuss the function plot in details. Function plot can create lines inside the axis. There are many ways to use a function, and we're going to go over it one by one. First, let's create two vectors. The first vector is x that covers the range from 0 to 2 pi. And I'm going to use linear space function. In this case, I'm going to create 100 data points. So I don't need to supply 100 as the third parameter. I'm going to add semicolon at the end so that the result will not be displayed in the command window. And this will make the command window neat. Next, I'm going to create a vector called y1, which is the sign value of x. Now we have two vectors. They are both 100 double precision values, so they are the same size. And then we can use them to plot a line. And in this case, I'm going to use the x as the x coordinate of the dot in the line, and the y1 at the amplitude of that function. So I'm going to use the plot function, and the first input will be the x coordinates value, and the second input will be the y coordinate value. And when I hit enter, you will see that a sine function is plotted inside the axis. I'm going to create a third vector called y2, which is a cosine value of x. And next, I'm going to plot sine and cosine in the same axis. I'm going to use the plot function, and I will supply the xy values for the sine wave, which is x, y1, and follow another pair of vectors to define the cosine wave, or the cosine function, which is x and y2. If I hit enter, and then I go back to the figure window, you will see there are two lines plotted. One is for sine, this blue line, and the other is for the cosine, the orange line. This is the standard way to use plot function, which means that you have to supply the x and y value in a pair of vector. If you have more than one lines, then you need to supply the next line also in the xy pair of vectors. This is important because in the next video, we're going to discuss how to modify the style of the lines, and there will be two ways to do it. One is use the so-called style character vector, or use the property values. And in either case, you will add the third input, which defines the style of the line right after the pair of the vectors, like the xy1 or xy2. So you will see how to change the styles of these lines in the next video. When we look at these two plots, you will find that both sine and cosine, they share the same x values. So in this case, we can actually make things a little bit simpler. So instead of like we provide the xy1, xy2 pairs, what we're going to do is to combine all the y values into a two-dimensional array. And you will see that the y1 and y2, they are row vectors, so I can make a two-dimensional array so that the y1 will be the first row, y2 will be the second row. So this is what I'm going to do, is y equals, I'm using the array creation methods. So in the bracket. First row, use semicolon to change the row, and then the second. And in this case, you will see that I got a y, which is 2 by 100 double precision. And now we can actually use a plot function. In this case, we only need to supply x value once, and then we will supply the y value, right? And just for the sake of argument, I'm going to close this figure window so that what you will see will be a newly created lines. Here you go. So you will see sine and cosine lines in the figure window. The size of x, which is 100, must match at least one of the dimensions of y. In this case, the second dimension of y is 100, so they match it. So in this case, that the plot function will work. Otherwise, the plot function will not work. So let's say if I do a transpose of y. And in this case, it will be 100 by 2, right? But I can still use a plot function. And I'm going to close the figure window again. You see, it still works. However, let's say if we have the x vector, which is a subset of the original x vector. So let's say I would do x equals x 1 to the 50. And you will see x value is 1 by 50. And if I'm going to use a plot function again, that will not work because it will search for the y array and it found that there's no match in either dimension. So in this case, there will be an error. Okay, this is generally how we're going to use a plot function. There's a very rare case that you will use a plot function without the x value. For example, I'm going to use plot y1. Since the x value is not provided, then the plot function will use the index of y1 as the x values. And you will look from here, you will see it's 100 values, so that will be the index of the vector y1. And similarly, if you try to plot y, which is a two-dimensional array, MATLAB will take the values of each column as the values of the amplitude of the line. And then the row number will be the x values. So here you go. So you can still see the sine and cosine lines. However, if I do the transpose of y again, so that make it as a 2 by 100 values, then if I use the plot function and supply y as the input, the MATLAB will take each column as a value for a line. So there will be 100 lines.